Dark bleatings, everyone. I'm here today to talk to you about my long relationship with physical books and then my affair with the Kindle. Now, you might have heard stuff is going on with Kindle, Amazon specifically at the moment. I was going to cover some of the changes with Kindle, things like you won't actually own your books anymore, even when you've paid for them, if you're buying digital books, but it's been so thoroughly covered on YouTube and BookTube especially, so I'm going to link Criminoli's video about this in the description if you want to go over and watch that. So I just thought I just didn't want to retread what I've already heard and been told on YouTube, that there are better videos with people who've done way more research on that than me. So yeah, I'll link Criminoli's video in the description for that. But I just wanted to talk about my habits with physical books. I'd say I'm borderline obsessive about my physical copies. I have a system. I'm very uncomfortable with getting rid of any books unless I've got duplicates, and I like to gift them to people in that case. But even books I don't like or books I don't plan to reread, I do not like to part with. And so my house is slowly but surely getting overtaken with physical copies of books. So yeah, and I'll move on to Kindle shortly. So I have always been a reader since I was a kid, and I recently learned through a therapist that I follow that people who had any sort of trouble in their childhoods might surround themselves in their adult lives with the things that made them feel happy and safe as a child. And toys are an example. A lot of people that collect action figures or pops or, you know, plushies, things like that. Adults that still collect those kinds of things, often it's because when they were playing alone in their bedroom with their toys, that was their safe space. And it occurred to me that because I was introverted, I got bullied a lot and social situations felt like a nightmare for me. I just got so conditioned to either being picked on, like in a school setting, and made to feel really inferior in a lot of ways to everybody. And then socially, that translated to even when I was with my friends, I felt like they didn't like me and didn't want me around, and I was uncomfortable. And, you know, I still, you know, when you're lying in bed at night and something cringeworthy that you said 24 years ago comes flooding back to you just to embarrass you all over again. I have that all the time because I think that that's when I started cracking jokes, and half the time they didn't land because they weren't funny. So I just make myself even more weird in any given situation, and I still struggle with that as an adult. I've tried to get to grips with that. People my age now, I'm 38, so the my friends now are a range of ages, like say from like 30 to 60. I'd say I've got friendships in those age brackets, and people of these ages don't tend to bother spending their time with people that they don't like, because, you know, priorities, life, time is short, all of that. So I'm trying to get a bit more less mean to myself in my thinking, and, you know, just assume that the people who choose to spend their time with me actually want to now. But yes, I think that books were such an escape for me when I was a kid. I was most comfortable when I was on my own reading a book with nobody else around, and you know, my earlier childhood, I did read quite a lot. I don't remember the actual stories themselves, but I do remember the reading experience of several books. I remember reading Matilda and everyone around me getting annoyed because I would get so engrossed whenever I picked that up that nobody could get my attention. I was just so locked into the story. I didn't even hear what was going on around me. And those point horror books, Goosebumps, all those Sean Hudson books I remember reading. I remember reading the Enid Blyton stories, and I don't remember any of those stories, but I do remember where I was when I was reading certain books, how I felt when I was reading them, the sense of peace and entertainment that I got from everything, and it was just a wonderful time. And so when I heard that thing about people, adults surrounding themselves with the things that made them feel safe as a child, I suddenly realised that physical books are slowly but surely encroaching on every space in my house. My office used to house all my books, but I have too many to keep them all in here now. So behind me I've got 4 bookcases, that are full, and those are just horror books, and those are the books that I have read. And then on the wall I've got my very small collection of fantasy and sort of like dystopian stuff that isn't really horror. Then I've got another shelf of non-fiction autobiographies, and then I've got another shelf of academic texts. I've got this little cubed shelf thing full of books that I have the duplicate copies, and I would like to give them away to people, but I'm so bad at doing giveaways. I don't know how to give them away, but I've got a whole bunch of stuff I'd love to gift to people if they're interested in them. And then downstairs I have got 2 bookcases that are my TBR, and that's all my physical books. I find it really, really hard to part with books, even if I don't want to read them again, as I said, and even if I didn't like them. Have I ever culled? Yes, I have. I've done it twice, and I regretted it both times. The first time, I just didn't, I think I was, you know, in student housing, I didn't have space, and da-da-da-da-da. So I culled my books, and then I was really upset because then suddenly I wanted to reread half the books that I'd given away. And then the second cull, I just decided, no, I'm not having books in every room of the house. This is where they're going to live. So I got rid of them when the number grew too great, and then I regretted it and went back to the charity shop and bought most of them back. I don't know, I guess that's a little bit obsessive. I think maybe even if I don't enjoy books, I do still like to reflect on my reading experiences, and I do like to talk about books that I didn't enjoy and maybe revisit them sometimes to see why I didn't enjoy them. And I think maybe because also I write, I think that you can learn a lot from the books that you don't like, even more than the ones you do sometimes, about your own writing methods and storytelling and all of that stuff. So books are just really precious to me. I think that they're sincerely my first love, and I'm never ever going to not be a reader. I can't see it ever happening. I can't see a day coming, because I just, as the years have gone on, I've read more and more and more. This year I started fresh, and I was telling myself that my only resolution for this year, because I don't tend to make New Year's resolutions, is to not put pressure on myself to get through review requests really fast, because I would get I do that for free. I don't get paid to do reviews or anything like that. I'm never going to charge for them, but I would still be putting like immense amounts of pressure on myself to try and find the time to read all of these books. And I always have dozens on my, if I close my requests for a month and then I reopen them, guaranteed in the first week I've got 40 new books pending for review. I think I'm gonna have to close requests more often, unfortunately, just so that I don't get overwhelmed with the number. But I told myself at the start of this year, right, no more. You have to live your life, read the requests when you can get to them, just let people know that they can't depend on you for a time frame. This will all be fine. And since I've said that to myself, I've read more books than ever. At this point in the year, I've probably normally read about 10 books. I've read 30 books so far, and that's not because I'm some sort of reading wizard. I think it's because I've been really stressed about the real world, and so I have been escaping into fiction, horror fiction specifically, to get away from it. I cannot believe that I currently find the world and the way things are going so stressful that the world of a zombie apocalypse where people having their guts ripped out is preferable for a short period of time to what we're currently in. But I do find that I'm really anxious at the moment about, you know, I'm not going to get political, but I will say this. The United States is terrifying. I can't imagine living there right now. And regardless of which way you typically vote, this is different, and I hope that people, however they voted, realise that and, you know, don't take this stuff lying down. And the UK is, I feel like the UK is sort of following suit, trailing behind a little bit and adopting some of these ideas, and I'm very worried about it. But so yeah, I would prefer to read about, you know, a horrific demonic possession or some sort of world-ending disaster, because it feels less stressful to me to exercise these anxieties in a scenario that isn't actually happening. But yeah, that's why I love books. I didn't mean to talk about that, but that's happened, so that's just staying in the video now. So anyway, let's lighten up. Where do I get my physical books? I've made a few notes. So my physical books, I do get, even though I tend to take ebook copies for review instead of physical, because I don't want authors to have to spend their money all the time posting books and covering the cost of physical books and things. I do still get physical copies of books a lot from authors. I tend to try to buy from bookshops if I can go to them. I prefer independent sellers, but I live in a town where there's just nothing. I do buy books from charity shops quite often, because unless it's a new release that I like, can't wait to get my hands on. Like, I cannot wait to get my copy of Tim Lebbon's new upcoming novel, for example, and I've already pre-ordered the anthology that Brian Keane put together based on The Stand. But yeah, generally I'm happy to just get a second-hand copy, so I try to support smaller business if I can. I have used Amazon a lot. I'm trying not to so much anymore. Kind of just trying to put my money where my mouth is about how I feel about certain things morally, and I don't really want to. I know it's not going to make a difference if I suddenly stop using Amazon, and I can't really, but yeah, I'm trying not to buy. I prefer to buy direct from publishers and authors if I can. So why do I keep all my books? Because I don't want to get rid of them, and I don't have to anymore. I'm not in a position where I have to. I mean, when we filled a few more bookcases, I might have to start being a little bit more ruthless about my thinking, or move house with bigger rooms. Buy more bookcases at the very least. Also, I like them for decoration. Looking at my books makes me happy. Walking into this room in particular, if I'm having a bad day, makes me feel very de-stressed and calm, and I love the aesthetic of books as well. I just love them. And I do just typically like to be surrounded by the creative arts and words and stories, other worlds. I think my physical books always remind me that there is a lot of good in the world. There's a lot of shared empathy to be enjoyed in a story. I've made a lot of friends with a lot of, through books. I'm friends with a lot of the authors I love now, and that's amazing. So I don't know, physical books just bring me a lot of comfort, basically, I think. Now, here's where my affair with the Kindle began. It was a rocky road. So I first got the Kindle that I currently use in 2012. I got it for Christmas, and this story's I've told part of this story before. So I was in a relationship with and this is putting it really nicely, an absolute dickbag. He was such a dick. I spent most of that relationship counting down the months till the tenancy ended so that I wouldn't be financially penalized for leaving, because I couldn't leave. I was like kind of financially trapped there. So for most of that relationship I hated this guy, and I was just waiting to get out. And before you feel sorry for him, I had my reasons. Like, this is how I had to do it. So one of the things I first bonded with this guy over, the first time I went to his house before we lived together, he had all of these books, completely different to the kind of stuff I like to read. And so I was like, oh, a reader, that's great. So like, that's not a requirement in a partner for me. My husband doesn't read for fun very much. He dips in and out of something sometimes. But it is a nice thing to have in common with someone, and it is something I used to look for to have in common with somebody. And so we talked about books a little bit and whatever. And then when we moved in together, I was unpacking my books, and I had a few bookcases worth of books. And as I was shelving them, he was visibly getting annoyed. And when I asked him what was wrong, he was like, why do you have so many books? Haven't you already read these? And I was like, yeah, but I don't get rid of books I read, especially if I love them. I like to shelve them, house them, use them for decoration, and I like to look at them. And he was like, yeah, but are you going to read any of these ever again? And I was like, no, there's always so much on my TBR. Probably not. I don't reread very often. It's very rare. And he started just making fun of me for being a loser and keeping my books. That's what he called me a loser. And I was like, I'm so confused by this attitude, because you're a reader, you have books, you don't get rid of, you've got, and the books he had as well were really expensive. They were we're talking, you know, 50-60 pounds a book, and he had like 20 of those, and then a bunch of more like 20 to 30 pound price marks. So he'd spent money on his books. So I was just really confused, and I was like, but I was like, I don't get how you don't get this, because you have books. And he was like, yeah, but I haven't read any of them. And I was like, what? And he said, and I quote, I don't want to read any of them, but if people walk into your house and you don't have books, they think you're stupid. So I was like, so let me get this straight. You have spent easily over £1,000 on books that you've never had any intention of reading, and you've picked books with a pricier, you know, that are more expensive because they look more expensive. So you've just bought books to give the impression of intellect and, to a degree, wealth, but you're not going to read them. But you think I'm stupid for keeping books that I treasure. And it was so weird. And yeah, and I was like, I don't think that intelligence is linked to reading, although I do think comprehension skills are really important, and I'm going to make a video on that in the near future. But there's a lot to be learned from reading about how you comprehend text, and going forward into your adult life, how you regard the information that's given to you, and your critical thinking skills and stuff. But reading as a hobby isn't a reflection in and of itself of intelligence by any means. Like, you know, my husband is really smart, one of the smartest people I've ever met. You know, it's not a reflection on intellect. But for somebody who was so concerned about looking stupid, I just thought, if you're worried about looking stupid to people, you could actually read the books and learn what's in the books you bought and have the information that you could talk to people. Like, it was so weird. So anyway, skipping ahead to that Christmas, he was also the kind of person that tried to make me feel embarrassed for everything I liked, and then tried to force me into having the same hobbies as him. And it was coming up to Christmas. There was an advert for Kindle on TV, and he said, oh, what do you think of Kindles? And I went off on a rant about how I never wanted to own one, how I love physical copies. I was afraid that e-readers would be the death of the printed book, although that's quite selfish, because I should care more about the environment than just having thousands of reams of paper in my house. But that's how I felt at the time, and I just said, I hate them. I actually hate them. I was just so adverse to e-readers for some reason. So of course, naturally, he bought me a Kindle for Christmas, and when he gave it to me, he said, you can't complain, I've spent money on you. This is the latest version of the Kindle. And I was like, so I was grateful. You know, I was grateful, and I wasn't an asshole about this gift or anything, but he had intentionally picked a present for me that he didn't want to put any thought into, and he just covered the base of like, oh, I've thrown money at you, so you can't say anything. And he bought me something he knew I didn't want, like, for a fact. He knew for a fact that this is the last thing I wanted. And so I neglected that Kindle. It went in a drawer. I did not get it out. That was 2012. I got my Kindle out in 2022, when I started Happy Goat Horror, basically my website, because initially when I started taking review requests, I told people they were going to have to send me a physical copy of the book, because I didn't have an e-reader, because I forgot about the Kindle. And then I realised quite quickly that meant that I was just going to be giving my address to strangers all the time. And the people I'd given my address to have been fine, obviously, but I thought, oh, I can't really care. I realised that Happy Goat was going to take off in the review request department, because I got so many review requests so fast. I wasn't I thought I'd get the odd one now and then, but I get dozens a week, so it's a lot. And then because I'm an author myself as well, I know the pain of having to pay for physical copies, pay for postage to send them out, and then half the time the reviewer doesn't get to your book or anything, and that's just the way it is. So I thought, realistically, I do need to take e-copies off people to make it more fair. So I dusted the Kindle off, and I've never looked back. I really like it now, and I have dozens of books on that thing, and that's how I prefer to take my review requests now, because it separates my review request pile from my personal TBR. And I love the features of the Kindle, like, you know, if I come across a word that I don't understand, you can just click on it and it'll give you the definition, so that's great as you're reading. Also, I like being able to maximize the size of the text and things like that. So there are lots of perks. I will never like the Kindle more than physical books. Like, if I had to give up one, it would be the Kindle would go immediately. But it is really helpful, it's really useful, and I'm going on holiday soon, for example, and it's Kindle is ideal for going on holiday. Obviously, if you're packing, there's a weight limit. You know, I like to read several books, so it's just much more convenient. Something I'm trying to work on is not buying so many books when I think I've already mentioned, I've got nearly 300 on my current TBR that I own in my house. I've pre-ordered some stuff as well that'll be coming. I've also subscribed to the Abominable Book Club, so that's 3 books every month that I receive. So outside of the Abominable Book Club, I am currently doing a Read What You Own challenge. I'm trying to read 100 of my books before I'm allowed to buy any more. So I am waiting on things that I'd already agreed with authors that they could send me a few physical copies and stuff, and pre-ordered books and things. But I am really trying so hard not to shop books right now, and it's hard, because usually if I see a book on social media, or say a YouTuber I like mentions something like Eric Smith, Criminally, or I've started watching Rachel Oates a lot, I tend to just buy the books they're talking about, and then I'm like, oh, I'll get around to reading them, but now I'm just putting them on my wish list, and it's really hard. So basically, my name is Kaylee and I'm a book addict, and I don't really know why I made this. Maybe I just wanted to share my obsessive ways. I would love to know if anyone has moved from being obsessed with collecting physical books and they've moved over to e-readers instead, because most people I know are either like more for one format or the other, and usually the people who are obsessive about collecting are collecting physical books. So I would love to hear from you if you're somebody that used to be obsessed with physical books, but now you're quite chill about your Kindle or whatever, you're relaxed about it. And I would love to know what the turning point for you was. I don't know that I want to have a turning point, but I would like to know if that's possible. Speaking of Abominable Book Club, I got my email saying that my box is out in the wild and on its way to me. So you'll probably see that on Saturday. Hi, I'm Barry. Subscribe or else. So with all that said, I really dying to go and carry on reading the novel I'm currently reading. Did I say currently twice then? Anyway, it's by Peter O'Keefe. It's called Counted with the Dead, and I'm really enjoying it. So I just want to get back to that. My unboxing for Abominable will probably be on Saturday if it arrives tomorrow or on Saturday. Tomorrow we've got another Silent Hill 2 Let's Play with my brother. On Sunday we have an author interview that I'm really excited about. I am going to be making a video about the importance of reading comprehension, like your comprehension skills, soon. I also want to make a video on the book versus TV show of You, because I'm really interested in that now that I finally read the book. I did it the wrong way around and saw the show first. And there's a whole bunch of other topics. If there is anything that you want me to cover, any sort of listy things, I am putting together a series of if you like this Stephen King book, then try these indie recommendations. And I'm going to try and go, I've made one of those videos already, but I think I want to go 5 books at a time in publication order for Stephen King, and then just give you alternatives that are sort of in the same sort of vein. But let me know if there's anything that you want me to make. Anything you want to see here, I'd be happy to make it. Sorry about the lack of bookish videos last week. I was just living in a pit of existential dread, couldn't motivate myself to do anything. But I'm back now. Back and talking about books. Bleed!